Imagine a universe where power isn't just an attribute, but the cornerstone of existence. In this universe lived a thinker whose ideas were so radical and challenging that they questioned established notions of morality, empathy, and the very nature of humanity. What if the virtues we hold so dear, mercy, humility, and forgiveness, are actually the shackles that prevent us from achieving true greatness? This is what Friedrich Nietzsche believed, and now we will delve into the essence of his controversial philosophy to find the answer to the pressing question: why does nature not tolerate weakness? Stay with us, because the final discovery may fundamentally change your perception of yourself and the surrounding reality. At the heart of Nietzsche's philosophical views lies a deep rejection of weakness, both in others and in himself. But what did he mean by this concept? Nietzsche was not talking about the absence of physical strength or temporary life troubles. He pointed to a deeper and more dangerous form of weakness: submission to mediocrity, a tendency to obey, and a reluctance to take responsibility for one's life. According to the philosopher's deep conviction, the vast majority of people prefer to go with the flow of weakness, as it seems to them a simpler and more convenient path than a persistent striving for greatness and self-improvement. Weakness, in Nietzsche's understanding, is not just a characteristic, but rather an ingrained way of thinking, a conscious renunciation of the life challenges that fate throws at us, and a reluctance to accept the chaos that is an integral part of human existence. But what made Nietzsche so harsh on the manifestations of weakness in people? To answer this question, it is necessary to penetrate his unique vision of human potential and the forces that, in his opinion, suppress its disclosure. Nietzsche's critical view is primarily directed at what he called slave morality, a term that reflects his sharp rejection of values actively promoted by society, and especially by institutions of organized religion. Slave morality, according to Nietzsche, elevates weakness to a pedestal, exalts qualities such as humility and self-sacrifice, seeing in them nothing more than sophisticated survival mechanisms for those who are deprived of power and influence. These values, according to the philosopher, are born from a sense of resentment and deep-rooted envy, what Nietzsche called the French term ressentiment. Imagine a person who feels completely helpless in the face of those who possess greater power and influence. Instead of directing efforts to overcome their weakness and achieve new heights, they invent complex moral systems in which strength is presented as absolute evil, and weakness, on the contrary, as an undeniable virtue. Nietzsche argued that this is where the origin of many values that we are used to considering unshakable and worthy of all respect lies. In modern society, there is a clear trend when sacrifice is elevated to a cult, overshadowing the joy of triumph, and ambition and perseverance are subjected to harsh criticism, branded as a manifestation of arrogance. Friedrich Nietzsche, an outstanding thinker, warned of the danger of such a worldview, believing that it hinders the disclosure of the will to power, the fundamental driving force underlying all human achievements. It is important to emphasize that the will to power, in Nietzsche's understanding, does not boil down to banal domination over others. It is about constant self-overcoming, about striving for personal growth and self-improvement. The philosopher viewed life as a continuous struggle, as a complex dance between chaos and order, between destruction and creation. True greatness, in his opinion, lies in the ability to accept this challenge, transforming the raw material of existence into something outstanding. Weakness, on the contrary, manifests itself in the refusal to participate in this life struggle, in fleeing to a comfort zone, in conformism and self-pity. Each of us has probably felt the attraction of these two opposing forces. On the one hand, the desire to break out of circumstances and achieve more, and on the other, the temptation to succumb to fear, doubt, and the pressure of public opinion. Nietzsche challenges us. What will we choose? The lulling comfort of weakness, or the exciting challenge of our own existence? Delving into the depths of Nietzschean philosophy, we encounter the image of the Übermensch, or the Overman, which occupies a central place in his reflections. The Overman is not just an improved version of man, it is a symbol of the highest development, one who has outgrown generally accepted moral norms and become the creator of his own system of values. According to Nietzsche, the overman is the embodiment of the rejection of weakness and cowardice. He does not seek guidance from external forces, but, on the contrary, accepts his uniqueness and the chaotic nature of being in order to build a life filled with meaning. But why is this ideal so rarely seen in real life? Nietzsche believed that society actively hinders its emergence, using various control mechanisms, be it religious dogmas, political systems, or cultural traditions. Society, in his opinion, encourages conformity and mediocrity, suppressing the desire for individuality and self-expression. Remember the rules you were taught to follow, the expectations placed upon you, and the subtle ways you were conditioned to prioritize safety over risk and stability over development. Nietzsche called for a rebellion against these limiting forces. He urged us to bravely face life's challenges, embrace uncertainty, and create meaning in a world that does not offer it on its own. Only in this way, he believed, can one achieve true freedom and become an Übermensch, the master of one's own destiny. However, it should be acknowledged that the path of individual becoming proposed by the philosopher is not for the faint of heart. Friedrich Nietzsche understood that liberation from the shackles of accepted norms and the struggle with personal shortcomings require exceptional courage and determination from a person. At the same time, he firmly believed that this path is the only possible one for achieving true freedom and full self-realization. His famous saying, "That which does not kill me makes me stronger," is not just a call for passive acceptance of suffering, but rather an invitation to view every life trial as a valuable opportunity for personal growth and spiritual enrichment. As we try to comprehend Nietzschean contempt for weakness, an important question arises. Are we ourselves ready to face our weaknesses and shortcomings? Do we possess enough courage to look into the abyss of our own fears, question the values instilled in us since childhood, and create a life filled with meaning and inner strength? Or, like many generations of people before us, will we prefer to succumb to the temptation of comfortable mediocrity and inaction? Let's delve deeper into Nietzsche's critique of weakness and examine how his ideas are reflected in the complex realities of the modern world. Nietzsche's philosophy is not just a critical analysis of social values, but also a detailed plan for personal transformation, a call to cast off the shackles of the surrounding grayness and awaken the potential dormant within us. To fully understand Nietzsche's contempt for weakness, it is necessary to explore the roots of this phenomenon. The philosopher believed that weakness is cultivated not by nature, but by society and culture itself. In his opinion, modern society often rewards conformity and obedience, while suppressing and punishing manifestations of individuality and independent thinking. Look at the institutions that define our existence. Educational institutions where obedience is valued more than creative thinking, the professional environment where conformity prevails over innovation, and religious teachings placing submission above self-expression. Friedrich Nietzsche argued that such systems reinforce a culture of weakness, discouraging people from questioning authorities and challenging established orders. Think about how this is reflected in your life. Have you ever felt pressure to hide your true self in order to conform to accepted norms? Have you felt guilty for striving for more success, freedom, or meaning? Nietzsche's philosophy offers a radical rejection of such pressure. It calls on us to reclaim our strength, question the rules we were taught to follow, and forge our own path. At the heart of Nietzsche's criticism lies the concept of herd instinct. By herd, he meant the masses, blindly following social norms without questioning their validity. The herd instinct thrives on fear, the fear of standing out, failing, or taking responsibility for one's life. It is a way of thinking that seeks comfort in conformity and avoids the discomfort associated with individuality. However, Nietzsche saw individuality as the highest manifestation of human existence. For him, the greatest tragedy is not failure, but an unfulfilled life, spent avoiding risks, suppressing desires, and conforming to others' expectations. The philosopher's call to action is expressed in the words about the relentless struggle of the individual against the leveling influence of the crowd. He emphasizes that the pursuit of originality is associated with the risk of being isolated, facing fear, but possessing oneself is a priceless privilege worthy of any sacrifice. Let's ask ourselves, how often, in striving for the approval of others, do we abandon our own uniqueness? How often do we prefer the comfort of conformity to the thorny path of self-expression? Nietzsche's call is complex but vital. Do we have enough spirit to embrace our individuality even if it leads to loneliness? According to the philosopher, it is in this courage that the essence of human existence lies, in the willingness to face the uncertainties of fate, to accept the chaos of life, and to create one's own meaning in a world that offers no ready-made solutions. This is the path to the Übermensch, the overman, who rises above the herd instinct and lives according to his own laws. But how does one embark on this path? The key to transformation, according to Nietzsche, lies in the concept of amor fati, love of fate. This is not passive resignation to circumstances, but an active acceptance of everything that life bestows, joys and sorrows, victories and defeats. To love one's fate is to see in every event an opportunity for personal growth, in every difficulty a test of fortitude. By viewing life through the lens of Nietzsche's philosophy, one transforms the perception of difficulties. Instead of resentment over misfortunes, one sees in them a crucible that tempers the spirit. Failures cease to be a source of fear and become stepping stones on the path to triumph. It is this mindset, according to Nietzsche, that opens the door to the full realization of potential. However, embracing amor fati, love of fate, requires not just words, but a profound transformation. It is necessary to cast aside grievances, to renounce shifting blame for one's circumstances onto others, and to take absolute responsibility for one's life. Nietzsche's philosophy is a challenge for those who are ready for self-overcoming, demanding courage, and unwavering resilience. But the reward for this labor is life in all its fullness. Existence in the style of the overman is the ability to find joy in struggle, meaning in chaos, and strength in the face of trials. It means living a life dictated by one's own beliefs and values. In continuation of this journey, a question arises: how to apply Nietzsche's ideas to the realities of the modern world? How to resist the herd instinct in an age of social media, where conformity is encouraged and individuality suppressed? How to find inner strength to accept one's fate in a world full of chaos and uncertainty? These questions will become the starting point for further exploration. The answers to them are capable of radically changing the perception of oneself and one's place in the universe. And most importantly, a final revelation awaits, a truth so profound that it can overturn all established ideas about life and the strength of the human spirit. Let us proceed to examine the connection between Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy and the challenges of modern society, where the conflict between individuality and uniformity manifests itself with particular acuteness. Nietzsche's warnings regarding the herd instinct sound more relevant than ever in the age of social media, mass culture, and global interconnectedness. The central question before us is how to resist the urge to mediocrity in a world that persistently demands our conformity. In Nietzsche's era, the herd was embodied by strict social norms and the unwavering authority of religious institutions. In our day, the herd has undergone changes but has retained its ubiquity. Consider how social media stimulates conformity through algorithms designed to promote mainstream views and suppress alternative perspectives. Think about how often we censor our thoughts and feelings to conform to the carefully curated images of reality that we display online. This is the modern manifestation of the herd instinct, an updated version of the very forces that Nietzsche criticized. According to Nietzsche, social media contributes to the spread of weakness by encouraging superficial communication instead of deep reflection, popularity instead of authenticity, and conformity instead of individuality. Each like, share, and retweet reinforces the values of the crowd, subtly influencing our behavior and conditioning us to seek the approval of others. However, Nietzsche's philosophy offers a solution to this problem. He urges us to reclaim our true essence, to resist the urge to conform to accepted norms, and to create a life that reflects our authentic selves. Imagine what it means to be authentic in the digital age. It does not mean rejecting technology or withdrawing from society, but rather using these tools to express individuality, not to suppress it. It is important to ask oneself, am I posting this because it aligns with my beliefs? Or because I crave the approval of others? Am I living for myself, or am I trying to fit into a mold set by others? The concept of the Übermensch, proposed by Nietzsche, provides a framework for finding answers to these questions. The Übermensch is not a hermit or an outcast, but a creator, an individual who uses his unique perspective to transform the world, rather than be transformed by it. In practical terms, this means developing self-awareness, embracing discomfort, and prioritizing one's own values over societal expectations. However, how is it possible to cultivate such a mindset in the modern world, which seems to relentlessly pull us in the opposite direction? The philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche offers 3 cornerstones on this path. First and foremost, it is necessary to learn to value solitude. The great thinker was convinced that true self-knowledge requires periods of isolation, when a person can fully devote themselves to reflecting on their own thoughts and aspirations without being influenced from the outside. As Nietzsche himself said, the great man is he who in the midst of the crowd preserves with perfect sweetness the independence of solitude. Solitude should be understood not as burdensome loneliness, but as the deliberate creation of space for deep self-analysis and impartial self-examination. Secondly, one should relentlessly cultivate fortitude. Nietzsche's famous maxim, "That which does not kill me makes me stronger," vividly reflects his deep belief in the transformative power of life's adversities. Problems and difficulties are not annoying obstacles to be avoided at all costs, but valuable opportunities to test and strengthen one's character. Therefore, the next time fate presents you with a painful defeat, try to ask yourself important questions. What valuable lessons can I learn from this situation? How can this experience temper me and make me stronger? Thirdly, it is necessary to take full responsibility for your life. Nietzsche resolutely rejected the very idea of shifting blame for our life circumstances onto some external forces. He was convinced that true strength originates in the conscious acceptance of one's decisions and in the creation of one's own destiny. Of course, this does not mean ignoring the harsh reality of systemic oppression or denying the existence of social barriers, but rather refusing to take a passive stance and not allowing these factors to completely define your life. It is about actively seeking ways to rise above these obstacles, adapt to complex conditions, and, despite everything, thrive. Turning to the emotional depth of Nietzsche's philosophy, it should be noted that his critique of weakness goes beyond simple condemnation, turning into a powerful call to action and self-improvement. Nietzsche deeply understood that encountering weakness is an integral part of human existence, a path strewn with fears, doubts, and hesitations. However, it is in this struggle, in his opinion, that the true meaning of life lies. Have you ever encountered a period of deep reflection when your own abilities, purpose, or significance were questioned? Nietzsche's philosophy resonates precisely in such moments. It reminds us that doubt is not a sign of defeat, but rather a stimulus for development. It is in moments of uncertainty that the opportunity arises to face one's weaknesses, overcome boundaries, and strengthen the spirit. Think about the challenges you face in your daily life. Perhaps it is a feeling of being trapped in a job that does not allow room for creativity, relationships that hinder personal growth, or an established way of thinking that prevents progress. The question that Nietzsche would ask each of us is this: are you ready to bravely face these challenges? Are you ready to accept the inevitable discomfort of change in order to create a life that fully reflects your potential? As we approach the final phase of our intellectual journey, the deepest and perhaps most transformative revelation of Nietzschean philosophy unfolds before us. This is not just a speculative conclusion, but a challenge thrown to humanity, a call to courage, to look into the abyss, accept the chaos inherent in being, and create meaning where the world seems to offer none. Stay with us, as the finale of this study is not just a point in the narrative, but also the beginning of a new stage, an impetus to awaken the power dormant in each of us and live a life full of purpose, authenticity, and power. Now we will turn to the culmination of Nietzsche's thought, to a truth so deep and multifaceted that it requires us to have the courage to face the very essence of our existence. At the heart of Nietzsche's critique of weakness lies a call to transcendence. This is the central task that the philosopher sets, to plunge into the depths of life's uncertainty, into the absence of predetermined meaning, into the chaotic nature of being, and to emerge from this trial stronger, more authentic, and more alive than ever before. For Nietzsche, life is not a puzzle to be solved, but rather a canvas, waiting for bright colors, a dance yearning to be performed. The weak in spirit perceive life as a burden full of obstacles and suffering, while the strong, those very Übermensch, see in it a boundless opportunity. They welcome chaos, unpredictability, and challenges as the material from which to create something outstanding. However, how can one achieve this sublime state of self-realization? Nietzsche's answer is both inspiring and perplexing. One must become the creator of their own life. This does not necessarily imply a career as an artist or inventor, although it does not preclude such a possibility. It is about taking full responsibility for shaping one's life path, for choosing one's own values, and for defining one's destiny. In Nietzsche's philosophy, creation is the highest manifestation of the will to power, as it requires a person to bravely face the emptiness of life and fill it with their own meaning. It is here that the concept of eternal recurrence comes into play, a thought experiment proposed by Nietzsche to challenge our life attitudes. Imagine, the philosopher says, that you have to live your life over and over again, exactly as it is, for an infinite eternity. Every choice you make, every action you take, will be repeated countless times. How would the realization of this fact affect your lifestyle? Would you embrace every moment, knowing of its eternal repetition? Or would you recoil from this thought, paralyzed by regret and fear? Nietzsche offered this idea not as dogma, but as an intellectual exercise designed to inspire us to live a life filled with meaning, courage, and authenticity. Eternal recurrence poses an important question. If your life were to be repeated eternally, would you be satisfied with the way you are living now? This question makes us think about the correspondence of our actions to our deepest values and about how consciously we live each moment of our lives. In the context of everyday existence, the question arises, to what extent does a person's lifestyle correspond to their deepest values and aspirations? Does the individual prefer to bravely face the challenges of fate, or do they evade them, driven by fear? Nietzsche's philosophy suggests perceiving life not as a burden, but as an opportunity for creativity, as a work of art created from personal choices, struggles, and victories. Particular attention is drawn to the concept of the abyss. Nietzsche warned, "When you look long into an abyss, the abyss also looks into you." This thought reflects the existential challenge associated with the need to confront the uncertainty of being. The abyss symbolizes the absence of inherent meaning in the universe. For many, this realization can be frightening, but Nietzsche saw freedom in it. The absence of ready-made answers is not a curse, but rather a gift that allows each person to create their own meaning and live an authentic life. Nietzsche urged us to embrace this freedom, to reject the illusory comforts offered by external authorities, whether religious dogmas, traditions, or social expectations. He argued that each person must take responsibility for their own destiny. This is a difficult task, requiring the courage to face one's fears, doubts, and weaknesses with unwavering honesty. However, according to the philosopher, this is the only path to true strength and self-realization. In conclusion of our in-depth analysis of Nietzsche's legacy, it is time to draw valuable lessons from his philosophical revelations. According to the thinker, weakness is not a predetermined state, but rather a conscious choice, a worldview in which convenience is preferred over personal growth, conformity over individuality, and inertia over active action. In contrast, strength manifests itself in courageously confronting life's challenges, in embracing chaos, and in creating meaning where it seems to be absent. This path is not for the faint of heart. It requires unwavering will, deep self-analysis, and unwavering determination in constant self-improvement. However, the reward for these efforts is immeasurably great. To live like an Übermensch, Overman, means to experience life in all its fullness, to find satisfaction in overcoming difficulties, and to leave behind a legacy that is a true reflection of one's unique personality. In closing, let me offer you a challenge. Do you have the courage to look into the abyss? Will you embrace the chaotic nature of existence and create your own unique meaning? Or will you prefer to retreat into your comfort zone, allowing public opinion to dictate your life? This choice remains yours, and only you can make it. Do not forget the words of Nietzsche himself, "Become who you are." The path to greatness lies not in avoiding life's challenges, but in embracing them. Not in seeking comfort, but in creating purpose. And not in following the crowd, but in forging your own unique